Recording is in progress. Good afternoon, y'all. This Platoon, evenings and weekends. We're golf. We're on week 12, day 3, and we're well into Django. And we love it. We're gonna have so much fun with it today. I'm excited. Um, what you have covered so far, hopefully, at this point, you can at least run a command to get Django running and use it to create some tables in a database. We have Docker Compose running that for us. So even if you forget all that, that's all right. Compose is going to help us out. But to get started, what we're going to use is the application Django Pokemon example, which is now truly and properly forked from Foxtrot Platoon, which is not the best way to do that. But now we have the forks. Hope that didn't throw Julius off too much. My bad. We're going to slap it in here. Oops. No, you don't see the branch there. But it's there all right. I think I can get away with the fetch, huh? Eh? I'm not going to display my lack of get skills for why I don't see a branch that does in fact exist. So for everybody here, I'm not feeling super great. I even missed work today, but we're here and we're going to keep going. I haven't typed today, so we're still warming up, but it's going to be a good lecture. Okay, so what we have done is we have cloned down this more or less ready to go Django project. We're not starting from scratch. We got one going. Hopefully one you're familiar with. As some quick orientation, uh, Django projects. There will be a main kind of project directory because this is all scary stuff, right? I've mentioned before, I don't want to get y'all to Django, run Django create app, and you all get blown away by all these insane amount of files. These aren't scary. These are our files. Just because we didn't write them doesn't mean they're not ours. We're gonna own them, and we're only gonna pay attention to certain ones at certain times. Main project. This is handling your general main, URLs in, and then from there on out, our different applications are. I don't want to. I'm about to say microtransactions. Microservices are going to be separated at this level. Most of your microservices are going to look pretty similar. Just their names are going to be different. They're going to have kind of, you know, once routed to them, they'll have their own URLs and whatnot. But we're not even going that far with this today. The only thing that this Django application is to this point is routing in, some configuration, and some models, right? Settings.py is where you go to try to figure out some basic stuffs. And what's important here is we've got our database picked out and running, or well, not running yet, but at least decided on. So hopefully this Docker Compose should start it up and it should point directly to that. With that said, I ain't looked at a Docker Compose file with y'all guys yet. What's going on here? Who wants to read this line by line and give a quick explanation of what it's doing? Who feels confident? I don't need like a 4.0 answer, just to let's get an idea of what these mean. I'm gonna call him Jonathan. I think I called on you before to explain line by line, but I like the way you did it, so let's go.
Okay. So version is the version that we're using, which would be 3. Yeah.
Yep.
Services, database, the image names, image Postgres 15. And in this environment, our user is going to be Postgres, our password is going to be Postgres, and our database is going to be our Pokédex database.
Okay. What are
One part
these?
of the I was gonna say one part of our wall for the port will be 5454, and the other side will be 5432.
Wait, what's this?
That's the first port. That's like where it's how it talks to each other, right? It comes in one, goes out the other.
Is that my port or is that the container's port?
Uh, yeah.
5059, take a guess.
I'm trying to remember which one's which now. I think the 5454 is my port.
Correct.
Okay. Whoo.
Port
Uh,
forwarding, port forwarding localhost to the container's 5432.
yes. Volumes. uh, I think that's like how it reaches the database. Yeah.
Hmm, in a way. Let's real quick make sure we understand volumes. This is very Docker specific and Kubernetes specific. Volumes are virtual mounts within your Docker container. We're saying, hey, make sure you save some space for this, and that's all it is. We
Okay.
could it's persistent storage is what it is. That Docker container will keep that as long as that Docker container is around. We could point to a different Docker container and say, hey, you're going to hold all the persistent stuff. Basically, we're just giving it a place to go to save some of this Postgres data.
Okay.
Um, Pretty good. Otherwise, the only thing I want to like kind of knock on is, and not knock on, but we'll see more of this in services. This is the database, but there will be more. Later, we will have like API, and this will be the Django side, and we'll have like front end. If we want to Dockerize it all, and they'd all have their own kind of things. Each one is going to be their own service, and you can break those down more if you'd like. But from a Docker Compose standpoint, that's going to be all your individual containers. You can call them containers at this. They are Docker containers. Uh, but yeah, but they're all going to be doing kind of different services. So that's that. This is a lot cleaner and nicer than the scripts we had, which would kind of just arbitrarily start a bunch of stuff up. This is lovely, lovely YAML. Ain't this wonderful to look at, guys? It's better than JSON in every way. I will not be argued with. Quit editing stuff. All right, so let's make sure that's all back put the way it's supposed to be. If you forget, there's a simple way to start up Docker Compose. This does need to be installed on your machines. If this doesn't work for y'all, let me know. Docker Compose up and then D for detach. I don't want to sit here and watch it run. I got other things I need to do in my terminal. Did it work? Yeah, looks like we got a container up. And that's my database. Cool beans. I'm not thinking about the database today. We're talking Django. So let's get into that. And I didn't have to remember that, by the way. If you go to this repo, it's saying, hey, there you go. Just like that. This dash V is verbose. Oh God, getting tickly. But yeah, I wouldn't call these learning objectives, but these are kind of the main things we're going to be doing today. Um, Validators, which I do want to talk about real quick. Writing Django validators and creating Django tests. It's pretty quick, pretty easy. If we follow a pattern to create tests for Django, once you've written one, you've written a million, you can add them as you go. So I think this is going to be a cool tool to add to our arsenal here. Does anyone want to take a stab, take a guess, or just know what a validator is when talking about models? And it's probably going to get blared stares because we haven't talked too much about this. I
Is
know
it?
Mike probably
Oh,
knows. Oh, you can go ahead, Jonathan.
I mean, I might be cheating a little bit, but validators are callables that check if a value meets certain criteria.
Yeah, what the hell does that mean?
Uh, they can be useful for using validation logic between different types of fields. So I guess you say, I don't know, it depends on the criteria, right?
I suppose if I was 12, how would you explain? I'm 12 and I understand object-oriented programming. What's a validator?
Like if it's true or false, I want it to be a certain Boolean, right?
We
It
can do
validates
some
if it's that.
in a way. I think that's good. We need to kind of see it in action so you'll get a good understanding of it. Uh, I was gonna call him Mike. I think I'm just gonna keep rolling with this. I don't want to spend too much time talking about what this thing may or may not be. I do want to hit on a point. We're gonna come back to this. So Django's got built-in tools. Everything you want, Django's got it. You know that old man sitting across the street, he's got a, shed full of every tool you ever want. That's Django, and that's a good reason to use Django. It's got just about everything built into it off the bat. Doesn't have a lot of need for a lot of plugins, although there are plugins. Most of what you need often comes out of the box. Validators no exception. There are some built-in ones. I'm going to show you how to use those, and I'm going to show you how to write a more custom one. It's pretty straightforward, I think. But do stop me if I run through this too quick. Let's check out our models. I'm curious about what we're looking at is our Pokemon models. Your models are always going to be within the app unless you're doing something big system-wide, but they're generally going to be within your application, right? Our Pokemon app is going to have our models. That's how I quickly find it here. Let's close up Pokédex.project _project. We're not be looking at that. Here are our models. I assume we've seen these before. We saw these yesterday, right? Does this look about the same as it did?
Yep, pretty much.
Sickness. So Pokemon, name, level, date encountered, captured. This one is going to kind of auto do it for us. That's cool. It's got a default for level. So really, if I need to if I want to create a Pokemon, I really just need to give it a name and capture. That's all we've got. I think we're adding something at this point. So I am going to add a description to this now. And the reason I'm doing that is to just show you two different ways to validate. So rather than copy paste this and freak you all out and say, whoa, 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 what happened to the old stuff? I think it's a little bit better to just add one piece at a time so we don't lose our minds, right? From Django.core. Does Jordan know to get Django.core for validators? Of course not. I would have to Google that, and that's fine. You just need to know what validators are. And also, this is Pythonic. You can say as V. You may not have seen this before or much at all, but you can add an as and make it V to make it a little bit more readable or less readable or easier in any way. That's a choice thing. It's a design. What I'm going to do with that one, though, is with description, which we are going to add in here. I will have to copy paste this, but we're going to explain as we go. Bam. Description. Models, text field, nothing crazy. We should know that. That looks like text field from Postgres. Default, unknown. That's fine. This might give us some issue with this, but just kind of taking a guess without reading docs or knowing Django. Does someone want to guess what this might do? Just this is duck typed Python. We can take a stab.
Well, throw an error if it's less than 25 characters and or more than 150 characters.
Yeah, it seems like a good stab in the dark at it. That's what I think it's going to do. I bet that's minimum length of characters and maximum length. So we're going to have a description that, stays within 25 to 150. Maybe that's how it is in real Pokemon. I don't know. I haven't played since I was 12. I always find some Pokemon nerd in each cohort who gets cranky with me, and I gonna get more annoying if that's the case. All right, nothing else is changing. Everything else has been left here. That's that. That should work out of the box. But let's test it and let's see what that actually means. So have we popped in the shell before? Oops, not Dr. Python, manage.py. Shell. Oh, goodness gracious, Jordan. What's going on? Why can't I see any of these things? What's this explosion? There's a lot of nonsense here, but right off the bat, someone know what I haven't done?
You're not in the virtual environment?
Correct. More correct. I don't have Django installed on whatever Python I'm using. You could install it globally, not a good idea. So, get all that goodness in there. Great. Now, should it work?
You have to do the migrate thing since you made a change to the database.
You're absolutely right. And I just created a database from scratch, so there's really nothing in that database. So let's do these things. Do this, Jordan. Such a verbose tool here. Not really. This is the most verbose you'll see in Platoon. There's nothing crazy. So using the manage.py script, we're going to make migrations. Magic, I think not. In our migrations file, or sorry, directory, we got this thing. This just spat out. This wasn't here before. This is an explanation of what the model looks like that is going to be created in the database with a table, right? In a lot of frameworks, or if you don't have a framework, you're doing stuff by scratch, how do you maintain source control of your database? What if somebody goes in and just creates a new table? How are you going to know? Well, you wouldn't, not unless you enforce something, or you have to do, create your own migrations like history. Django makes us do this. It says, yep, you've got a migration. This is something that will be saved in source control. You should do that. You want to see a list of your database changes because that can matter. If we need to roll back, we need to know what the state was at a certain time. This is great. Python or Django does this on our own. You might be annoyed of like, I have to make migrations. That's privilege speaking. We would normally have to create our own thing and write history for it, or write some doc. Who wants to read docs of on January 3rd, I updated this database line? This is all auto-generated, and this is great. No migrations to perform. Oh, I disagree. Or do I? Let's see what's, I don't know why it's telling me that. I expected it to create. Oh. All right, let's keep going. We're gonna find out. I'm not sure what's going on. I expected that to do a migration, but we'll find out as we go. I keep typing the word Docker. What I want to do is get into this shell. It's just a good old crazy shell, nothing to it. But it has access to a lot of our Django configuration, including the database, which is probably the biggest tool for this. I'm not in the shell all the time when I'm doing Django stuff, but it sure can be nice to get some kind of source of truth and do things like this. If I wanted to import these models, because they're not here, right? I don't like, it doesn't know about this. How would I import that into the shell? Does anyone take a stab at that? Allison.
That would be from Pokemon underscore app dot models import Pokemon.
Absolutely. I'll even give it a star just because I don't want to type out Pokemon. All right, so we should be able to create a Pokemon now if things are working as intended. As we talked about, I just want to create this model as if we did it, any old kind of Python model. This is nothing crazy and new. I'm just going to call this new Pokemon, a little bit verbose. And the only things I need are name, which we'll just do Pikachu. And I think capture is required as well. Make sure that's capital. This is Python. Did that work? We created a class, so I should be able to pull this, right? Yeah, great. Looks good to me. Our dunder method is spitting out a string. Seems cool. Does anyone know if it's in the database or not?
You have to save it.
Correct. Now it's in there. I'm not sure why that migrate didn't work. I think it's because I didn't properly tear down my database last time, and I tested this last time I ran through this, so it's probably fine. Don't worry about that. I didn't clean up very good with my Docker. So it should be saved. Testing some of these things though. What if I wanted to, because we got this validator, right? New Pokemon 2. If I wanted to, just fast, my goodness, add a description here that does not go along with our rules. I was gonna hello, which I think we're already gonna run into that problem. But is this a problem? Does it seem to violate our validation?
Seems like it should.
It seems like it should. Oh no, it's there. It did it. It just did it. We could we could verify that if we really wanted to. Start the shell back up. Pull those models back in. And oh, how do we do this? Do y'all remember off the top of your heads how to get model or how to query using Django ORM? I have to remind myself. I'm pretty sure.
Pokemon.objects.all. And then
Yes.
open close parentheses. Yeah.
Uh, oh, did I mess up? All right, cool. Yeah, they're all in there. It's in the database. Validators didn't do anything. What a load of crap. This is what validators really do. And this is what I want to get the point across with. I just showed you I can put stuff in the database, ignore the validators, not a problem. This is simply a tool that will come up when I run .full clean. All these should fail. Let's just for the sake of it, kind of real quick steal one. I don't want to type anything out. None of this stuff is. It's fine. All right, cool. There it is. There it is, actually working, doing what it's supposed to be. And we're going to see this with the other type of validation. All the validators do, they give us a command. It's full clean. It's in Python. It's using the module. It is going to run the full clean command here on whatever we have validations for. What the hell is full clean? It runs these things here. Verifies the fields, verifies the model as whole, verifies uniqueness, and then any constraints. Talk about constraints here in a bit. That's what full clean is. And it failed it. Did it stop us from putting in the database? No. We need to utilize it with some kind of Python, probably. Do you want it to automatically block you from putting stuff in the database? Maybe. Django people think we should give you a tool to decide whether or not you want to input stuff. Questions about that before I show you a quick custom validation? No. There we go. All right. This is another way to validate. You can write this anywhere you want. For cleanliness sake, Platoon suggests we create a py or validators.py folder. All right, we are in that Pokemon app. Right here, code, validations, validators. Validators is what it should be. Doesn't matter. It can be foobar for all it is. This is not configured into Django. This is us deciding, let's make a validators.py. That seems pretty straightforward, right? Paste all this in there. But don't worry, we're going to talk about it. Again, Django.core, this is where you're going to get exceptions, and we're going to have a validation error. Don't have to remember this. This is just how it's done. It's always going to be done this way every single time. You can copy paste this project and start your own, and these are good work practices. Validate name. It's just a function that we're writing. We are writing ourselves a quick error message here. It's just a variable in proper name format. This is very, very custom. We're not using any tools. We're building it ourselves. This is as Python can get. Regex. You may not remember what exactly that does, and you don't have to. We got a helpful little comment here. If you're leaving comments in your code, it should be for stuff like this, not stuff like dates the name. Stupid comment. I don't want to see that. This stuff's good though. Start at the beginning of the word. First letter should be capital, alphanumeric. Let me back up. Only alphabet, capital alphabetic letter. After that, alphabet number, lowercase, as many times as it needs to be till the end. And it's going to be a string. So what this is saying is a good name would be something like Pikachu and not, it's not equal to Pikachu, right? We want capital letters. We want as many after that as we can get. And it can be any of this as long as it's alphabet, right? If there's like a 2 in there somewhere, that's not okay. That's not an acceptable name. That's what that regex is saying. If you get crazy with it, reach out some other file that has all Pokemon known to man and, reference that. It's raw Python. We can do whatever we want with it. If good name, which is literally just saying, hey, whatever name you've given me, if it matches this regex, truthy. If not, falsy. Returning name is great and all. We need to turn that name. That's how we're going to utilize it. But really the important part here is this raise validation error, which we brought in. Validation error, if you want to read the library, requires a message and then some parameters. Probably just a message if you want. We're giving it parameters saying, hey, name is going to be this name. And the error message should say proper name format. Here's the name. I know writing it ourselves makes us feel warm and cozy about it, but you got to get in the habit of reading Python because Django's going to be printing some Python for us. And we got to, get good at being able to quickly read this stuff. We're past the point where I'm going to be typing out every single line so we all, can keep track of it. We need to be able to read other people's code. And this is pretty simple, I think, to jump into. So, as a reminder, it's just in Python. It's just a function. This is just the only new thing we've added that you guys haven't seen before with regex. And we're plugging in here at the end of some basic regex function, right? Take a string, does it match regex? Yes or no? Do this thing if no. Cool beans. Let's plug it in. It's quite simple to do. We do need to import this in, and it'll be like that. What did I do? Right here. From validators, import validate name. That's what that function's name was, right? And then the only bit we're going to do is plug it in like this. This is the Django way to do it. You want to use custom validators, which you should. They'll save you more headaches than you can understand. Oopsies. Just slap it in there. Throw it in that field. The validators, by the way, validate name. So the magic here, because there is some magic happening behind the configuration. When full clean is called, it's going to verify that the model you run it on matches all the validations, right? And it's going to go pull that from wherever it got it from. So we should see this work in real time, failing if we've got bad names. I can show you that in the shell if we want, or we can go straight into probably a better way to do it, which is writing tests. But I will do it in the shell again if somebody else wants to see that now or after the lecture. Happy to, just to get that muscle memory. But I don't want to eat up too much time just trying to beat something in y'all's heads when really testing our models this way is better. Nobody cares if you know how to use the shell. They do care if you write some sweet tests for your database. This is helpful. You don't have to speak for your code if it's here, right? Or your ability. In a Pokemon app directory, inside test.py, we can write some unit tests. Right here, it's empty. A lot of copy paste, but it is boilerplate. Django test, import test case. We need to bring in Django core exceptions, this validation error, only because we're not pulling it in from validators, right? That's not a new thing. We need to know what a validation error is. So we're using it here in test.py as well. And then we're bringing in our models. This is how you create your classes, your tests. They should look like this. The only thing important here is they need to start with the word test. Just like in Python, Python unit test. If it starts with the word test, it will run that function when we run test. That is convention, but it is also configured. This name's not super important outside of what test fails at the end. These names aren't super important outside of helping us identify what the test was. So you can call them what you want, but make sure it starts with the word test and make sure it's explicit. All this is going to do is try to create a Pokemon. So new Pokemon, Pikachu, description, only the best. Yeah, okay. That might be true. I don't know. Can't verify. Try and accept. What's this going to do? Kim.
It's going to run it past anything you've set to validate.
Absolutely. It's going to run all these validations in this order. I don't know if it's in this order. It doesn't matter. Check the fields. Check that the model is complete. Like it's got everything that's required. Check that it's unique. We don't want duplicate models. And then any constraints. We'll come back and talk about constraints at the end, I promise. All you need to know is this is probably the best way to clean. I would always full clean unless you know for a fact you're making dirty models and you're okay with that. Like you don't have to make sure they follow these strict guidelines. If you've got ones with that are not unique, then well, then maybe we don't want to run a full clean on them. Or we need to configure that in our models. But that does raise an exception. So it's going to fail this test if the new Pokemon is not created. And it will not create it. It will uncreate it. Sorry, let me back up. Oh my gosh. I'm getting so stopped up. We're on full clean. If it doesn't pass that, it will not create that Pokemon. Or rather, oh my goodness, let me back up. It's right here in the dadgum stuff. My medicine is hitting me so hard. Oh, this checks validation. Is it valid? Is it okay? Is it cool? This is its own separate test. Did the Pokemon get created? That's all this is testing. This is seeing that the Pokemon class does actually create a model. That's it. It would be none if new Pokemon wasn't actually created. Sorry. I feel like I could have lost someone there. Let me just real quick again. This line here should create a Pokemon if your class is correct. If your class works, everything's right. Therefore, self-assert is not none should return, what you expect if this worked. I would expect this to fail if we got rid of description, right? Or well, description's not required. If we got rid of captured. Our exception here, fails the test. Seems good. Second test is going to do the exact same thing, but notice the name of this. Create Pokemon with incorrect name format. That is an incorrect name format. Why is that an incorrect name format, Tisdale?
So it doesn't start with a capital C.
Correct. How do you know that's an incorrect format though? Where's that come from?
When we did the validator.
That's right. We've got a set here. More importantly, the actual, if you didn't know, if I sat you down today and was like, hey, what, because you just saw me do that, but the path we can take is, all right, let's go look at that model. Name format. Oh, let's just validate name nonsense. Validate name, validators. Let's go to that file. Yep, doesn't match that regex, right? That is the full start to finish reason for why that test would fail, and we expect it to fail. We're gonna run fail or a full clean. If it doesn't throw an error, our validator is not working correctly, and we should fail the test. So we're gonna fail pretty much. We're gonna fail if this does not throw an error. Does that make sense? Because we're trying to run this full clean on something we know doesn't work. If it does work, and I know this is we're kind of doing a lot of reversing. We're checking our validator here, right? This checks to see if that's a correct Pokemon. This is checking our validator. So I expect it to fail. I want it to fail. But I'm only going to fail if this works. I want an exception error. That's good. That's what I want. I'm not going to fail the test. So even though I failed to create the Pokemon, that's what I want. So don't fail the test if you're checking to see that it failed to create. Let's see this in action and create our own real quick. Django's just so great. I don't even have to remember anything. I think the word test probably should work. Is that what it is? Sure is. What a lovely tool. And there it is right there. Python manage.py test. So Python in all of its glory said, test? Sure thing, boss. I'm going to go to test.py, which I created, and I'm going to run the tests. I'm going to run the things that started with the word test. Did it. Ran 2 tests. They're okay. I'm tearing down this test database that I stood up because it can do that. Stands up a fake database, runs against it, and then destroys it when it's done. That's clean. I like that. Just for the sake of showing that we can replicate this, Megan. Are you here? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Let's create a third test. We wrote 2 validations. Rather, I didn't write this one, but it's here. Let's write a test that tests this validation. So I'm in test.py. All I really need to do, because this test 2 is testing that validation works. I want to test that validation works on something else. I'm going to copy paste down, and you're going to help me work through what we're going to change to make this a new test. Because most of it's going to be the same, right?
Mhm.
And I'll even help you out kind of with what the name format I want to see is. Description. All right, so I got a test 3. We need to check the description format. What do we change next? Getting rid of these silly notes. Do you understand what I'm asking from you?
No.
Okay. In our models,
Sorry.
no worries, no worries. In our models, our Pokemon model, it's got two validators. One we've checked, one we have not. What we have checked is that the name is valid. What we need to check is that the description is valid. Get that out of here. So I've wrote a new function. All it does is create a Pokemon, and I want it to fail when it's got a bad description, and I want it to pass when it's got a good description. What would you change about this line to make it fail in the description and not the name?
So if we go, do you mind clicking back on models again?
Yeah.
So it looks like it has to have a minimum length, right? Of
Mhm.
25, correct? And then can you, sorry, back on the same one, can you scroll over a little bit and then a maximum of 150? So maybe to test it, we could make sure the characters are less than 25.
Sounds good to me. And we need to put this name back, right? So let's make it an actual. It doesn't have
Pikachu.
to be yeah, we'll just make it Pikachu. Anything else you want to see changed here?
So try new Pokemon full clean. So feel. And then instead, on line 42, shouldn't it be improper description format does not meet character requirements?
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. We'll use the word counter. All right, cool. Is this going to work?
Um,
I don't know. Let's find out. Heyo. Ooh. All right. So this is the silliness here. And I wasn't trying to trick you. I forgot that it would work this way. We decided exactly what this error message was going to be. So in our tests, we said exactly what we expect to see. Assert is equal to true. Basically, we wanted the error message to have this in it. We write up our own cool error message here, but that's not really what it spat out. And Django tells us that.
if false is not true. What does that mean?
I know that doesn't sound particularly helpful, but it's kind of helpful in that assert true came out as false. This text was not in our e-message dict description. What was, I wonder? It's probably a quicker way to figure this out. Let's just see. Let's see if this runs the way I want it to. I don't know. Oopsies. Stop that. Oh my Lord, what did I do? Is it gonna print the way I think it's gonna print? Oh, there it is. We wanted to check that this string is in this error message. I didn't know what it looked like, so I just printed, hey, in that error message, what does this look like? I didn't make it very easy to find, so probably smarter do something like a little bit more obvious there. There, it's sticking out. It just wants that. So that's easy. That's what the actual error message said. Should this work now? Sure should. Let's get rid of all that extra nonsense. I might have lost a little bit of y'all there. The important part is,
So if you change the description from looks to like a little bit longer, you would have to update that. It has 5 to whatever characters it actually has.
right, because this is what this actual error message said. This validation error module that we ran, it found that validation error and it spit out a message. That message.
Could we also create a additional custom validator?
Absolutely. If you want to do it that way, you can also do it that way, which is probably, if you're getting real into the nitty gritty, honestly, comparing strings to strings, you're going to run into problems. We like true and false. This is just a helpful kind of way to get it to visualize it. You're absolutely right. Because we didn't know that this is what the message was going to look like, we had to kind of guess and figure it out on our own. And I wouldn't expect you all to do that. If you want to write tests for it, then you can create your own validators to run tests against. Is it silly to test the module? I think so, because as soon as Django core exceptions validation error library gets an update to its output, this test is going to start failing, and we'll be like, oh no, our test's failing. It's not that this library is now failing, you know. So this is not the greatest thing to do. I just wanted to show you that we could, and then I forgot that we're not going to know what the string is called. Write your own validators if you want to test them. Test your own validators. We don't need to test the library. Does that make sense? You'll pick up what we're putting down there. Because descriptions was using the built-in library, we don't necessarily need to test that. That's not our code. We don't need to test other libraries unless there's a history of that being a problem.
Jordan,
which I've seen. Yes.
I have a question. So when I was listening, I had got to thinking, does this, I mean, I can look, but does this have the assert raises unit tests, or is that because I know that the Django model is using its own unit test case, but will it also support the regular unit test cases for Python, or is that not recommended? Especially for something like this.
I don't know.
Because that way you wouldn't have to worry about the string part, and you're just testing that the exception got raised.
It looks to me like it uses the unit test framework, and you should be able to do anything you can do in unit tests.
Okay. All right, cool. Cool. Thank you.
Yep. What I wanted to rant about real quick before I pass out. Validation at different levels is something that I think people struggle with thinking about. And I kind of just want to real quick talk about it. I even got excited about talking about it and started this. Oh, that's not going to do what I want it to do. Ew. Front. End.
Circle
Back.
movement?
What?
No, I was wondering if you was drawing something that was moving or not. If the circle was like in motion or something.
No, I'm talking about three different things, and I need to make sure we're all on the same page. This is a really awful thing. But we haven't done a lot of forms. We will be doing forms. If I've got, a form to fill out, like the simplest form on earth, sign up. Give me an email, give me your password. That is something you probably want to get on the front end. Why? To know if something is a valid email and to know if a password matches your requirements, that's all stuff I'm happy to put on the front end loaded up over there because that's something we can immediately answer yes and no for. When you're trying to catch issues, the further back you're catching them, the more complex it is and the slower it is to get that back to the user, right? I don't know if you've ever, any of you have tried to fill out a stinking online form, like, I don't know, or try to upload your resume somewhere, try to fill out someone's stupid, like, application. And it's like, okay, you need to just quick make an account. All right, I made an account. All right, hit enter. Everything's good. Goes to the next step. Oh, that was invalid. What do you mean it wasn't? Why didn't you tell me back then? And then you have to go back, reload the page, put a bunch of stuff in, redo it. They're catching it on the back end and saying, hey, sorry, that's no good. Send it back. Catch as much stuff on the front as feasible, right? If you're looking at basic input data, that is when your form, your JavaScript should be just right off the bat saying, with regex or however you want to do it, no, that's not right. That needs to be more characters. And it needs to be flagging them and letting them know. Now, you can load as much up on the front end as you're comfortable with or want to, but at some point you're going to need to kind of get to the back end. And for this validation that we're talking about here, these are not things that I would expect to catch on the back end. This is fine, but think about the front end of our app. This is simple enough stuff. What I would be doing on the back end is more complex things like, hey, you're only ever allowed to have 2 Charizards and their levels can't be this, and we need to make sure that other people don't also have a Charizard, and I need to run some kind of logics and stuff. That's the kind of logic and validation I want to see on the back end, right? Because that requires looking at the database and looking at the models and trying to make some kind of determinations. Trying to front load all that information to the front end is not very feasible, right? Core logic like that should be in these validations. Constraints like this kind of thing, like, hey, level needs to be 1 and then 99. We have all of these great tools to do these kind of things to protect our app and to protect our database. I wouldn't put any kind of constraints on our database if we're the only person accessing it. If you have an open database and there's other things hitting it and you're worried about that kind of thing, that's when constraints kind of come in. But almost never, ever do I want my database to be the thing that said you can't put that in. Because now the front end user puts in a form gets submitted at the back end it says, hey, hold on, wait, tries to put it in the database, it gets an error. There's so many different levels of errors that are being like thrown or not thrown. A database can very quietly say no. Let's catch as much of this as close to the user as possible. If you can't get in the form, please catch it with a validator on the back end and make sure there's a response to the front end. Don't, for the most part, I'm going to say this is very subjective. I don't want to see y'all's databases using these constraints. We didn't talk too much about it. We did a little bit. We don't want to do this. This is a pain to debug. Why is it good? It's at the database level. The database knows its own rules, and that's database kind of stuff. That's, that's great. But these errors are going to be a pain in the butt to track down. I don't really want to see them. What we talked about with the back end, there is a delay, right? It has to hit and then come back and respond. Use it when necessary. For the most part, as much as we can, as much as we're comfortable with, let's validate things on the front end. This is database and application bug protection. But it's at this level because it knows everything it needs. If it doesn't need any of this information, I expect that stuff to be on the front end. Does that make sense to everyone? Do we know what I'm talking about?
So when it comes to inputs, which you are saying that you want the validation done on the front end and not on the back end at the database, well, near that level as far as within the path flow.
Keep it as close to the user as you can is probably the best advice I can give. These validation errors of, this needs to be 25 to 150 characters. As far as showing Django do this is great. Awesome. Realistically, if we have a front end for this, we ought to catch it there, because that's quick. They'll know nothing is even going to get past the front end. The API is not going to be like, oh, you gave me bad data. Now I have to verify it and tell you it's bad data. If we can catch it on the front end, screw all that. That's a lot of conversations that don't need to happen. It'll be snappier. It'll be more, responsive, and there's not going to be any bugs in it because it's right there. You have to use JavaScript to do logic, which I know we're all opposed to, but like we're going to have to. If you need the API and it isn't information you can flood up to the the front end, if you need the API, let's put it here. If it's something that could break the app or the database, let's put it here.
What would be a good example, I guess, of something that would maybe in reference to this example, the Pokemon that would be good to have it in the back end versus the front end?
So this is a Pokédex application, right? This is going to be all the Pokemon that exist, and and as you play the game, you like spot when you're like, who's that Pokemon? Like, that's Charizard. That's it. This is not keeping track of your individual Pokemon. This is keeping track of a database of Pokemon. The front end doesn't know what all's in the back end because it looks back like we're going to say that, hey, front end, give me a list of Pokemon. It goes, okay, talks to the API and brings them back. When we're inputting information into it, the front end can say, yeah, that's an accurate name, that's a good description, or whatever. These are all fine. But it's not going to know if someone's already input Charizard ahead of time. If this is your second Charizard you're catching, the front end is not necessarily going to know that. It could if you every time the front end loads up, you give it the entire database, it would know that. But it doesn't necessarily know that at that point. If you're just trying to do a post request, you're only going to have these models, right? Or these model fields. And it won't know what's in the database. So that needs to go to the API. So like I'm inputting Charizard, the front end's like, yeah, sounds good. Never heard of that before. And then go to the API. API needs to be like, hey, we already have one of those. You can't do that. That's when I would expect it to go back to the front end. There's a lot of subjectivity and everything. If you want to pull all that data, if it's not a lot of data, catch it on the front as much as we can. But there are going to be times where the logic is complex enough that it requires the API to make those determinations. The front end is only going to have what we give the front end, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And we'll see a lot more of this in action, especially getting to React, and maybe more of this will click. But I do think this is at least worth talking about now, because a lot of times I get questions and weird things where people are like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure how to handle this error on the back end. It's like, that should be on the front end. Why you've caused all this extra complexity and issues. Catch that early. Don't toss it back here and then bring it back and all that. Catch as early as you can. Man, these lectures get long when I start talking about Django. All right, we showed you how to add validators. Create your own validators. We wrote some, and then wrote some quick tests. It's just unit tests. It's nothing crazy. We then talked about when you validate, why, when, where. Make sure you can step through this lecture. It's pretty quick to step through if you're not explaining every step of the way. And then get started on your school API 3. You'll be adding some custom validators and then running the test.